Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome to the Legal Forum here only on the Islam channel with me, Lee Clark. Now, Legal Forum is a program where each week we discuss common topics in layman terms to help guide you with legal information. Breaking down the complex language of law, the Legal Forum will also highlight real-life cases and scenarios which will be shared by our experts. In this series, we've partnered up with Khan Solicitors and we'll be discussing common topics like family law, immigration, landlord and tenant disputes, and human rights. Today, we'll be discussing domestic violence. Now, according to the NHS, domestic violence, also called domestic abuse, includes physical, emotional, and sexual abuse in couple relationships or between family members. Domestic violence can happen against women and against men, and anybody can be an abuser. I'm pleased to welcome Shahid Dastgir Khan, Senior Partner and Founder of Khan Solicitors. Shahid, welcome again to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, and you?
Nice to see you. Now, this week's topic obviously is domestic violence. Can you just give me an overall, I know I've just mentioned of some categories, but domestic violence, what is it and what does it mean?
Well, there's a history to it. The first parliamentary act came into existence in 1976. Prior to that, domestic abuse or violence was considered a domestic matter, and therefore there was no protection for the victim. Also, the added difficulty was that it was not recognized as a crime. Now it is a crime, and if the criminal ingredients are not satisfied, then still there are remedies available in county court. And hence domestic abuse. So it's a wider definition now, and it includes emotional abuse, sexual, financial, physical, psychological. So it's quite wide-ranging now.
And you see in all the newspapers and the media these days, even with social media, people putting pictures on of people and, as you say, bribery and kind of emotional, physical abuse is one of the some of the categories, but it's a very wide-ranging topic. Are there any statistics to say, because historically you would have probably thought that it might be more males that are abusers than females, because obviously that is the case as well. But what kind of statistics are there available for what you know so far?
Well, the national statistics presently says that there are just over 2 million cases, recorded cases or reported cases of domestic abuse or violence.
Every year?
Every year,
okay.
Of which about 70%, or 1.1 million victims are females, and just over 700,000 males. So you're looking at 65 to 70% of victims being females, women.
So, and it's quite a high number. Yes. for obviously for women, but also I think the perception may be that maybe males don't suffer from this case. But if anybody's watching today's show, then and they're going through that, whether they're male or female, then the law is there to protect them, obviously. But it's commonplace for men to be abused as well as to be abusers themselves.
Yes, though it would be right to say that men are perceived to be physically strong, and in fact are stronger than women, and therefore what tends to happen is, this is still the case, that men tend to use their physical attributes, shall we say, to try and be more domineering. But emotional, when you talk about emotional abuse, it could be both ways.
It could be both ways.
Financial, again, I think it's getting, the gap is closing.
If anybody watching today's show, Shahid, is in the belief, or probably obviously well aware that they are being abused in any of the ways that we've just mentioned, sexual, emotional, physical, any form of abuse, what is the best way that they can help themselves, defend themselves, or what's their first course of action?
This is a very, very good question, and it is so important to raise awareness about how to seek help. Obviously, close friends and family are the first point of contact one should share of being abused with a close family member to start with. But obviously, one should also seek legal help. It could be from a Citizens Advice Bureau, it could be from a solicitor. There are many charitable organizations. Some police stations have domestic violence units and community safety units. Also, there is a National Domestic Violence Helpline, for example. So there are many avenues that could be pursued.
Do you find though that people sometimes will take a while for somebody to realise that they're actually being abused, because it has to start somewhere. It probably wouldn't have happened the first time you've met and you've gone out and you've been married for maybe the early part of your relationship, and then it's probably hard for some people to realise when it started. Is that the case? And then suddenly flicking that switch to go, actually, I am suffering with this.
It is so important to try and the partners should be open with each other, discuss if they are not happy about a particular situation. What tends to happen is that it is taken for granted that this is part of the bargain, part of relationship. For example, I don't want you seeing your friends. Why was your mother here? And you think, well, this is something quite normal. But many of the abusers are very, very nice in a relationship to start with, or they seem to be nice. Character does not show up or is hidden away or subtle in the shorter term. And once you start living together and as time progresses and there are different kinds of situations, that's when things start to show up, and that's when the warning bells should start to ring.
Would it be fair to say that somebody has maybe a lifelong history of being an abuser? Would it be fair to say that they may have done it for many years in past relationships possibly, or is it a case of somebody can just flip one day and be an abuser of whichever kind?
There is a facility available now through police where you can find out about the past incidents, etc., of your partner, or a close friend or family member can also approach. There is a scheme. They need help. Some of them have an anger problem, for example. Some have some past history, because of which they tend to behave in certain situations in a certain way. So there's a trigger. Whereas there are some abusers who would look for any excuse. There could be an emotional angle as well. Some partners' needs vary, and some are more insecure, others are not. So it could generate from an insecure background as well. It could be due to an insecure background in certain people. So it's quite a developing field.
Is there any I think a lot of people's fear, and again, I'm just grasping at straws here. Would somebody who's experiencing this have a worry about mentioning the crime because they don't know where they would go, what they would do? Because say they live in a married home or they shared accommodation, if they report this person to the authorities for committing these crimes, where do they go next? Because they can't just literally go and stay in the spare room. What does somebody do in this case?
I'll give you an example. Let's say there's been an incident and there's some history to it. Suddenly, let's say the man escalates and the wife, for example, she phones the police. The police would come and they would have a chat separately and together, and then decide what needs to be done. If the police feels that this is a situation where the man should be excluded from the property, they would ask him to leave.
There and then?
There and then.
Okay.
And they will arrest him, take him to a police station, and then there they will decide whether or not he should be charged. Even if he is not charged, he could still be excluded.
In particular cases that you've been involved with, and obviously they're, I would imagine, very emotional, very traumatic situations, how do you find that a situation is resolved best? I mean, because if somebody is an abuser, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to change overnight. Like, they're not going to have, being told off if you're at school, don't do that anymore, and you don't do it. So how is a situation resolved in your experiences to date?
With the help of mutual friends, family, if they are not taking sides, if they are taking sides, the situation can become aggravated. But if it depends on the couple. If they have a good relationship with each other and they are determined to resolve, then there is help available. Also, the police are quite helpful in situations like that. They are not eager to get someone. However, the police have an overriding duty to protect a victim. There have been incidences where, out of a situation, due to inaction, something bigger has happened. And people have, I don't want to make it sound very dramatic, have suffered serious injuries or have even died, been killed, sometimes things can happen.
That's obviously in very extreme cases.
Yes, that is in very extreme cases.
Possible,
yes, it is possible. And that is why these days when police are called, the police would first and foremost try and assess who the victim is and try and protect them, and that would involve excluding a partner who in their opinion is the abuser, and if there is clear evidence.
There's lots of kind of cases that I'm sure you've been involved with, but what kind of specific court orders can the court place on an abuser to help protect the person that's being abused?
The most common order is a non-molestation order, but that can be accompanied by another order, which is an occupation order. And the occupation order basically would exclude the abuser occupier. The non-molestation order would be basically not engaging in any kind of abuse, the kind of conduct that the abuser has been involved in, and to stay away also from the victim. It is these are time-related normally. An order can be obtained ex parte. What it means is that the other party does not have to be present, or it can be done on notice. But many of the applications, or most of the applications, are ex parte because obviously there is an imminent threat of some kind of abuse. Therefore, you do not want to tell the abuser because there could be a risk of harm. And therefore, you see a solicitor or go to a Citizens Advice Bureau, report to the police without telling the abuser if it is getting serious. Some abusers will actually increase the level of threat.
Wow.
Yes.
If the court put down a restraining order on the abuser or somebody who is judged by the court to keep their distance from the person in question, say that the court, as you said, could put that order in place for 6 months or a year, what happens after that time frame? is the person still protected if it, say the court put it in place for a year and that time frame goes and then they try to do something else after that restraining order? What happens in those cases?
During that period, a number of things could happen. One thing is certain, that either the relationship will start breaking up, or the couple would try and resolve not only what has happened, but their differences. Sometimes things happen as a result of genuine differences or misunderstandings. So they should try, there is an opportunity for both the parties to sort of work on their relationship.
Changing kind of tact a little bit here,
Yes.
What if the person being abused is a non-national, doesn't have full residential status, and might be therefore worried about making a claim against somebody who is abusing them because the fear of that they might be deported or fear of losing the home where they currently live? What kind of rights does somebody in that position have, Shahid?
Yes, okay. It depends on the severity of the case. Unfortunately, the Home Office works, their policy is quite different. The rules say if a relationship breaks down and there's a foreign spouse, they normally get 2.5 years, which is extended by another 2.5 years a stay. So, and then after 5 years, a foreign spouse can apply to become a permanent residence. So there's a long period. Now, the Home Office's immediate reaction is that the relationship has broken down, and the best solution is you go back to your country. However, if a partner has been a victim of violence, then two things can happen. One, an application can be made for a temporary extension of stay, and the Home Office will look into that 3 months or 6 months. The Secretary of State has the discretion to do that. Secondly, on human rights grounds, one can, particularly if there is a child involved, and if the child is a British child, so foreign spouse, British child, because the father, for example, is British, then the mother will be in a much stronger position, and she would be allowed to stay here.
When people approach you for the first time at Khan Solicitors, obviously you've had many years of experience in all sort of legal matters, and obviously especially domestic violence and immigration, which I know that you have a lot of experience in. What's the first, the police may have been involved initially, but then they say seek legal advice, come to Khan Solicitors. What's the first step of the ladder that you take a client towards to help them get through this situation? Is it to get a court order to start with? Is it to get the person excluded from the property? What's your first step as a solicitor and a lawyer to help people who are being abused?
Two-pronged steps. Number one, it would depend what the police has done. If the police arrest the person, sometimes the person would disappear.
Okay.
An abuser just does something, now
And they're gone?
they're gone. So you don't know when they may return or what they might do. The police, obviously, if they have strong evidence of abuse. I remember once I visited a house and I had to serve a court order on this man, and he was supposed to be a very violent person, and I was warned to be very careful if I go to the house. I couldn't find him. Twice I went, and the third time I succeeded. And one of the tenants came out, in the house, and he said, you should come at this time. He's here, but please don't say. He's very aggressive. And then I peeped into the front room. He showed me there was glass all over, crockery, etc. He had broken, smashed everything. Anyway, I went the next morning. I knew what time I would be able to catch him, and I just served an injunction on him, non-molestation court order ex parte, which I referred to earlier, And he just looked at me and he said, "Thank you." And that was fine. That was all right. But obviously, it would be inadvisable for a woman, if she is the victim, to stay in the house if there is this danger. And the two steps, so the police will be involved, and number two, we will obtain, if the police says go to county court, we will get an order straight away. The police would not be able to do much more than that, but in a county court, we should be able to get a non-molestation order with restrictions.
How quickly can you make that happen? I mean, could it expedite it very quickly?
The same day sometimes.
Same day?
Yes,
okay.
Or the following day. Yes, it can be done.
So people don't have to wait for weeks for this to happen and be put in place?
And civil court judges, like a county court judge, has the power also to put an abuser in prison. So there are, if they were to be in contempt of court by not following the restrictions that don't go within 1 mile radius, but if they do that, they could find themselves being behind the bars for a few weeks, for example. So these measures are available.
The thing that you talked about in the last half an hour or so on the show today is the fact is that seek the proper advice, seek proper help, because although family and friends and other members, other people that you may know might offer the advice that they think is best. The proper authorities may have seen these situations happen in the past, deal with them daily, and can offer you not only the best advice, but the correct advice as well.
Yes, that's right. And they are properly trained, they are professionals. So that's what should be done, yes.
Okay. Well, Shahid, thank you very much for the wonderful insight that you've given to this very tough subject, and I hope that our viewers at home have been given at least a little bit of hope as to where they can go forward from here. Thank you very much again, and we'll see you very soon. If you fear that you or know that you're being abused, then please do seek the proper help from the correct authorities and do it as soon as you can. There is no reason or point in you delaying. Seek help. So there you have it, some important and helpful information on domestic violence. We hope the scenarios discussed on today's show can give you a better understanding on today's topic. I would like to thank our guest, Shahid Dastgir Khan, Senior Partner and Founder of Khan Solicitors. Please bear in mind the views and opinions expressed on Legal Forum should be considered for informational purposes only and not case-specific legal advice. All topics are discussed in a generic nature, and it's important that you consult either a CAB, law centre or a solicitor before relying on it. If you'd like to find out more about the Legal Forum or the topic we discussed today, then please do email us at legalforum@islamchannel.tv. For now, it's goodbye from me, and thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum.